Namaste, friends. Welcome to the third Global Festival of Oneness, celebrating the life and works of Adi Shankara. Before we start the session, let me say a prayer. Sada Shiva Samarambham, Shankaracharya Madhyamam, Asmadacharya Paryantam, Vande Guru-Paramparam. We are very pleased to have with us Professor Madhusudan Penna, who is going to share with us the topic non-duality outside Shankara Sampradaya with special reference to the Jnaneshwari. Before we go on to the talk, I'd like to introduce the speaker. Professor Penna Madhusudana is Vice Chancellor, Professor and Dean, Department of Indian Philosophy, Kavi Kulaguru Kalidas Sanskrit University, Ramtek. He specializes in Yoga Shastra, Nyaya, Yoga, and Vedanta philosophy. He has been awarded the Advaita Academy Award last year for his Mahakavya on Gulab Rao Maharaj. He has 2 Mahakavya, 10 Laghu Kavya, and 13 translations and edited books to credit. Professor Penna is honored with the honorary D.Lit by National Sanskrit University, Tirupati, for his unique contribution in Indian philosophy. He has traveled to the Netherlands and was member of the Indian delegation to Canada in the World Sanskrit Conference 2018. He knows 6 languages, including German, and has made DVDs so far on yoga, Indian philosophy, and Sanskrit literature. The Tirumala Peetham, established by Bhagavad Ramanujacharya in the 10th century, conferred the Shastra Ratnakara on him. He has received the Maharashtra Government Sadhana Award, Pandit Satwalekar Award, Pandit Latkar Shastri Award, Pandit Ghatate Award, Somnath Trust Award, and with gold medal and the title of Best Scholar, Sri Bhashya National Award, and many others. We are indeed very proud to have Professor Penna ji with us. Welcome, sir.
So, Shruti Smriti Purana Nam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavadpada Shankaram Lokashankaram Asmat Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om. Dear friends, today on this auspicious day, we are going to discuss some of the cardinal theories of Shankaracharya and his influence on the other Advaita systems and the Advaita as understood and presented by Jnaneshwara in his Jnaneshwari. So this will be our point of discussion today. Non-duality outside Shankara tradition. So this is a very interesting topic because we are all very ardent admirers of Shankaracharya. What he has given to us through his Bhashya and Stotra Prakarana Grantha. So that is beyond our imagination because he has analyzed all the very important doctrines of Upanishads and has tried to present the essence of Upanishads at one place through his all kinds of works. But his impression and influence are so indelible that in the later period also, many stalwarts had worked on that. Many stalwarts may have differed from him, but still you can find such kind of big influence on their ideology also. So thus we find the legacy of Shankaracharya continuing in another form. Just like the Ganga, the river Ganga flows from the Himalaya, but it assumes different name. It's only difference in the name, not in the original nature. Similarly here, Shankaracharya's ideology flows through the philosophies of different scholars. That we try to understand. Now, we will be discussing Vedanta and its schools, Advaita of Shankara, other Advaita schools, Jnaneshwari and its Advaita. So these will be the main points. Here, when we go through the annals of Indian philosophy or Vedanta tradition, we find that before Shankaracharya also, there were some Advaita scholars. Because Shankaracharya himself had referred to their views. For example, Ashmaradhya, Apishali, Bhartru Prapancha, Bhartrumenta, Dramida, etc. are there. And even Bhagavad Ramanujacharya also had referred to some of these. And a direct reference to his own predecessor, that is Gaudapada Acharya, you can find, because Shankaracharya had commented upon the Gaudapada Karika. But we find that Bhaskaracharya's commentary propounding the Bheda was already there. And his date is, of course, controversial, but still 7th century to 4th century that has been assigned to him. Then we have Nimbarkacharya, Dvaita, Shankaracharya, followed by Ramanujacharya. Shankaracharya belonged or supposed to belong to 8th century AD. Then Ramanujacharya from Tamil Desha, he propounded the Visishtadvaita, followed by Madhvacharya in the 12th and 13th centuries, who had propounded the Dvaita, pure dualism. Then Vallabhacharya in the 15th, 16th centuries, Shuddhadvaita. Then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Achintya Bheda. Thus we find that except Madhvacharya, all the other had accepted in one way or the other the Advaita, because you cannot completely ignore it. When the Upanishads are talking about Advaita, it's very difficult. So you have to reconcile with the statements of Upanishads. That is the problem. Otherwise, there will be Upanishad Vakya Prakopa, Shruti Prakopa, or Shruti Badha. So all these Acharyas have made all possible efforts to interpret the Upanishadic sentences so that the Upanishadic Tatparya is the essence of Upanishads, or you can say the sentential essence that should be brought out. So with a view to churn out the essence of Upanishads, all the teachers, great Acharyas, had used their logic, their profound knowledge of scriptures, and thus they have presented their various views. But the Tatparya is very, very, you can say, bewitching, because the Tatparya sometimes appears to support Dvaita, sometimes Advaita, sometimes Sagunatva, sometimes Nirgunatva. So it was equally baffling. Therefore, some of the previous Acharyas preferred to stay in the middle, accepting both, like Bheda or Achintya Bheda or Dvaita. So these actually present a kind of a mid path between Dvaita and Advaita. But Shankaracharya very vehemently criticized such a standpoint, and he very clearly made his point that it should be Advaita, that is unmixed with Dvaita. So this Advaita was highlighted by Shankaracharya through his Bhashya. Then Ramanujacharya, as is evident from his Vedartha Sangraha, said sometimes Bheda is acceptable, sometimes Abheda is acceptable. So when somebody confronts whether you are a Bhedavadi or Abhedavadi, he said, I am Bheda and Abhedavadi. Though most of the Ramanuja followers say even today that their inclination is towards Dvaita. Though Bhagavad Ramanujacharya had named or called his philosophy Visishta Aikya. The word Visishta Advaita is perhaps found for the first time in the commentary of Sudarshana Suri, Shruta Prakashika. So he called, or he used the word Visishtam Advaitam or Vishishtayoho Advaitam. So that kind of interpretation was there, and later it was it became very popular. So in this you can find Advaita word. Then Vallabhacharya's Shuddhadvaita also we find Advaita. Then we have Madhuradvaita. So all these are the different Advaita systems in which you find the word Advaita. But when we compare the Shankara's philosophy with the Gorakhnath philosophy as found in his Goraksha Shataka, Siddha Siddhanjana, and Goraksha Paddhati. So in these we find that Gorakhnath also presents a kind of Advaita. So thus we find that Advaita was acceptable to many of the teachers, and they wanted to show their philosophy slightly different from that of Shankaracharya, and thus they have given a different name to the Advaita, like Visishta Advaita or Shuddha Advaita or Madhura Advaita. So this was only a kind of slight deviation from the earlier. Otherwise, Advaita was immanent in all these. Now, what is the subject matter of Vedanta basically? Vedanta means Upanishads, Brahma Sutra, and Bhagavad Gita, basically the trio, the three basic texts. In these three texts, we find a gradual analysis, discussion, and presentation of these topics. Because the Bhagavad Gita is supplementary to the Brahma Sutra, and Brahma Sutra were composed to explain and substantiate the Upanishadic statements. Thus, Vedanta proper means Upanishads, but the other auxiliary texts also are called the Vedanta, and ultimately these three are known as three Prasthana, as we all know: Shruti Prasthana, Smriti Prasthana, and Nyaya Prasthana. So when the Upanishads talk about the Brahma, when they talk about the Jiva, Moksha, and other such matters, generally a common reader gets confounded. He will not be able to bring out the exact purport of the Upanishadic sentences. Therefore, the Brahma Sutra were composed. And the main purpose of Brahma Sutras was to present the Upanishadic ideas in a coherent manner, connecting all these, and finally leading them to the Brahma. That was the idea. But Brahma Sutras are, after all, Sutra. They are all these matters. What is creation? Who is the creator? What are the Mahabhuta? And can inert matter be the creator? Self, who does and who enjoys the fruits of deeds? And who is the regulator of all the cosmic discipline? What is rebirth? Who takes birth? What is karma and its effect? What is liberation? Who gets liberation? How can one get liberation? And how to connect all the Upanishadic statements. So this is the subject matter of the Vedanta. And here the Upanishads, they present these ideas differently and variously, like the Brahman is the support of all heaven and earth, etc., found in the Mundaka Upanishad. The Brahman is invisible, etc. Tat yad adreksham avyavaharyam, etc. That is Mundaka Upanishad. The Brahma is the Bhuman, Chandogya. Brahman is Akshara, Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. Brahman is the measured one, Kathopanishad. The divine beings also qualify for the Brahma Vidya. So these are the scattered ideas found in the Upanishads. But unless we connect all these, we cannot find a very single idea that we can cling on to that and continue our spiritual life. So basically, the trio puzzles us. That is cosmic reality 1, 2 is matter, 3 is self. Who am I? And what is this outside world? And how both are born? Are they eternal or non-eternal? Or is there any connection or not? Ultimately, is there one single reality or many realities? So all these are the things that actually interested the ancient seers also. In this, Adi Shankaracharya had supported this theory on the basis of Gaudapada Karika and other, that ultimately Brahma Satyam, Brahma, that is the cosmic reality, and it is the eternal reality, that you are a part of that. And the matter is also a part of that. So he said, there is matter, but it is mithya. Brahma alone is Satya. Then Jiva is Actually, it is the third category that can be put in the Jagat or Brahma. So people may say that self belongs to the Jagat only. It is inert. It is like matter. But Shankaracharya says on the basis of the Upanishads that Jivaha Brahmaiva. But that Jiva is not in that state as understood by the common man, but Jiva without all the conditions, the psychological, physical, time, spatial and temporal conditions, if he is out of that, there will remain only the consciousness, and that is Brahman only. You cannot find any difference. So this is his understanding of the Upanishadic philosophy. And thus we have Brahma, Jiva, Jagat, the trio. And here, how to connect these? For this, Shankaracharya has devised a mechanism. It's very logical that first you take the Jagat. Jagat is that which is having name and form. And according to Shankaracharya's logic, all that has name and form is Dvaita. Because Dvi is the number. Dvi means two. Dvi ita, dvabhyam itam. Dvi plus ita, that becomes Dvaita. Dvitam tadeva dvaitam uchyate. Sureshwaracharya also explains. So Dvaita ultimately means that which comes out of, or which is projected by, or which consists of two. That is name and form. This is Shankaracharya's understanding. So name and form, whatever you find with a name and a form, you understand it is Dvaita. And that Dvaita is negated. It is Advaita. It is a state. Shankaracharya says, when you cancel all the Dvaita, what remains there is not voidness, like the Buddhist or any other philosophy, but it is a completeness. It is Advaita. So this particular Advaita, the state of Advaita, may have been touched upon by others, but they could not understand the positive nature of this Advaita, which is obtained by negative process. So discarding everything, you get to something that should be the result of negation. So there should be, therefore it should be negative. But Shankaracharya says it is all positive. That is Advaita. So this Advaita is the summum bonum of all the works of Shankaracharya. He wants to stress upon that due to our ignorance, we are totally entangled in the attractions of this Dvaita, and through knowledge that is obtained by spiritual discipline in several births, we come out of that, and coming out of the clutches of this Dvaita leads to Advaita. So thus that particular Advaita should be properly understood, realized, then it is moksha. So this is the understanding of Advaita, that Advaita is not negative, though it is obtained by negating everything. It is highly positive. That's why in the Upanishad it is stated, Asti Brahmeti Chedveda Santamenam Tato Viduhu. So when we understand this positive entity called Brahma Advaita, then we can get all positivity. Tatra ko mohaha kashokaha ekatvam anupashyataha. Ishavas Upanishad also tells that when we place ourselves in this Advaita reality, then we are no more troubled by the duality, that is Dvaita, Shoka, Moha. And we know that Shoka, Moha were the troubling factors of Arjuna also. Shoka, Moha, Mahodadhav, Nimagnaya, Arjunaya, Gita, Mimam, Upadidesha. So there also we find that Shoka and Moha are very dangerous, and Arjuna was also tormented by them, and Gita was taught to him. Then what is this Advaita? We find this Advaita is a state, but How to name that? Because it is Nama Rupa Rahitam. If it has a name, it cannot be Advaita. Because already it is stated that whatever has name and form is Dvaita. But this Advaita should be known properly. What is it? Then the Upanishads come into picture and say Sat Chit Ananda, or to take exactly the Taittiriya Upanishad, Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. So that is very important that it is Satyam Jnanam Anantam. That Satya is one aspect of Brahma. Just a minute.
You've got muted, sir.
Oh, sorry, ma'am. So, what is Satyam? Generally, Trikala Abadhitam Tattvam Satyam they say. That means that which is present in all the divisions of time is Satyam. But in other words, whatever is not Asatya is Satya. Because as it is, this Satya cannot be explained, the commentators feel. Similarly, Ananda, Dukkha Bhavaha, Chit, Ajita Bhavaha. So everywhere it is seen the absence of the limitations. That is Sat Chit Ananda, Satyam Jnanam Anantam. And Shankaracharya explains in his commentary on the Taittiriya Upanishad that each one of these three can be taken as a proper definition of Brahma. So the cosmic reality or the ultimate reality called Brahma is Akshara, imperishable, eternal. But that can be taken as Satya or Jnana or Anantam. So thus each one can serve the purpose as a definition of Brahma. So thus this Brahma, that means the cosmic reality, as we all can understand, comprises of three things: the matter, the individual self, and the energy called God. Because in Shankara's philosophy, the creating force is different from the eternal reality called Brahma. There is a slight difference. This is what we understand from the second sutra, Janma Dyasya Yataha, in the Brahma Sutra also. So, Shankaracharya explains there that the pure Brahman cannot be the creator, sustainer, and annihilator of the universe. Therefore, we should accept the Shavala Brahma. So that is his explanation of the reality. But ultimately, whoever may be the Vedantin, he has to accept that if Brahma has to be explained, then all the three should be properly explained. All the three are not independent. We can find a kind of interdependence also. Like the self depends on the world depends on the self, and both depend on the God. So we can understand that a kind of dependence is found among all the three. Then the mutual relation, mutual dependence, all these need to be explained properly, logically, and on the basis of the scriptural sentences, so that we can glean out a complete philosophy. This is basically the expected one. And in this process, we come across the three, of course, three are having their existence. But each existence is of a different type. Generally, in our life also, we experience that we come across several things, we perceive several things, and we see, we hear, we smell, touch, all these. So these are the matters of sense organs. And these are, because these are, as I told you, matters of sense experience. Since you are experiencing them, they should be real. But Shankaracharya says, your experience cannot be the base for ascertaining the existence of such things. That means I cannot say that something is real because I'm experiencing. Because Shankaracharya points out that when we experience, something as a different one. Like I mistake something for a different thing. Like I mistake a rope for a snake. There I am experiencing snake. I see it. I have the knowledge of that everything. But still, it is not real because it is contradicted. So therefore, a real thing should be uncontradicted one. This is the basic thing. Whatever is contradicted later cannot be real. Then, though all these have their own existence, relative existence, there is difference that Shankaracharya understood and presented, like Brahma is the ultimate reality that has ultimate existence. Self is only a conventional one, Vyavaharika Satta. World, that is Pratibhasika Satta, Pratibhasate, like snake on the rope. So the world is also experienced on the Brahma, the cosmic reality. So therefore, the world experience is a temporary one, which can be negated later by the Brahman realization. And whatever is negated later cannot be real, ultimately. So therefore, though these two have their relative existence and serve the purpose, ultimately, they cannot be real. The ultimate reality is only the Brahman. So this is Shankaracharya's philosophy. And differing from Shankaracharya's ideology, some other Advaitins, that means who carried the word Advaita in their philosophy, had postulated their own theories. They had presented Shankaracharya's views and pointed out the apparent logical fallacies in those ideas and said, because your statement or theory goes against logic, or because your statement or theory goes against scriptural sentence, it cannot be accepted. So thus the later thinkers had tried to provide a kind of logical explanation of whatever Shankaracharya had presented or left in his commentaries. Because when we go through the commentaries of Shankaracharya, we find that sometimes he had already foreseen the possible logical fallacies, and he presented them as prima facie views and offered his own explanation of them. And sometimes he had left something incomplete in his bhashya that the later commentators completed that, or they had added their own logic and scriptural support. This we can find in the Nyaya Rakshamani of Ape Dikshita also, that whatever we don't find in the bhashya is also taken for discussion. That is actually the additional contribution that the commentators generally make. And here, this this kind of existence was explained by Shankaracharya. And when it came to matter and self, Shankaracharya, on the basis of the scriptures, made a very clear distinction between these two, saying that matter is not self, self is not matter. First, because matter is negated, matter is limited, matter is perishable. Self is unlimited, self is never negated, self is eternal. So this kind of distinction was made, and it was a clear blow to the Charvaka and Nastika philosophy. Basically, Charvakas don't believe in the existence of a self other than the body. Though the other people accept something suprasensory, still they don't accept self. The Bauddha, Jaina, they don't accept as something called as Jiva or Chaitanya, etc. They attribute that to different skandha and other things. But Shankaracharya says that the energy that is flowing through the body, that is functioning differently in the body or through the body, is definitely the Brahman, the ultimate reality. And he has presented various views on the basis of the Brahma Sutras, like Avachedavada, the Abhasa, Pratibimba, Vivarta, Amsha. Some of these are found in the Brahma Sutras, some of these are found in the commentaries. For example, Amsha, we find in the Brahma Sutras, Amsho Nana Vyapadeshat, Vivarta is not exactly found. Abhasa evacha, that is found, of course. So some people say Abhasa is the word for the Vivarta. Then we have the Pratibimba, Ata evacha upama Suryaka divat. So that Suryaka is taken, and that is exactly the Pratibimba. Avacheda can be found in the commentaries. So thus, Jiva is taken by some teachers as the limited consciousness, by some as a semblance of consciousness, by some as the reflection of consciousness, by some as an appearance of the consciousness or a part of the consciousness. But part should not be taken in the physical sense, part in the sense that which carries the same properties, that is the part. And Brahman and Jiva, we find here, just like two kinds of interwoven threads create a fabric, Brahman, which supports Maya, is the cause of the world. So a fabric is created by the interwoven threads. Two are required. Similarly, here Brahma and Maya together, they constitute the thing called world. So here Maya is the collective ignorance or the collective creative force of the Lord also, because Maya is taken as Shakti, Maya is taken as the Leela by some. When it came to Avidya, there is slight difference in their idea that Jiva is the locus of the Avidya, and Avidya has Brahma for its subject matter. So this is in the form of superimposition, whereas Maya is not superimposition. Maya is projection. Avidya is superimposition, wrong or miscomprehension. Maya is just projection, and therefore Maya cannot be found in the Jiva. Avidya cannot be found in the Ishvara, that is Brahma. So Brahma has the potentiality called Maya, while the Jiva has the limitation as Avidya. So this is the difference. And because of this Avidya only, Jiva forgets that he is the Brahma. So therefore, as it is said in the Brahma Sutra also, like Parabhidhyana tutirohitam tatohi asya bandha viparyayo. So this is Parabhidhyana. Ultimately, he is away from the reality, and that causes all the problems. Now, we come to the major concept of Adhyasa. This Adhyasa, as explained in the commentaries of Shankaracharya, and especially in the Adhyasa Bhashya on Brahma Sutra, is in the form of miscomprehension. That is, mistaking one for another, or something appearing as a different thing. So we find that the rope appears as a snake, so we get confused, or a conch shell appears as a piece of silver, or several other things. They are there. So this is basically misapprehension, that one thing is real, but something is projected. And people understand that the semblance or resemblance is the cause of this illusion. Because some characteristics are common, there is illusion. But Appaya Dikshita says not necessarily. Sometimes even without any resemblance, there is a Brahma. For example, Shankaracharya himself explained in the Brahma Sutra Bhashya that Balaha Neelam Nabhaiti Nabhasaha Talamalinitadi Adhyasyanti. So he says the ignorant people understand or know that the sky is blue, but blueness is an attributed one. It is not blue at all. So it is just a misunderstanding. But here you find that it is not because of some resemblance, because there is only one sky. We have never seen another sky somewhere. So therefore, without any resemblance and without any previous experience also, we get into the influence of this misunderstanding or misapprehension. So this is the view presented by the Vedantins. And now This apart, all this Shankaracharya's explanation on one side, when we compare that after Shankaracharya, the Advaita was slightly modified for the need and understanding of that particular society, that Yadava Prakasha, who belonged to the 10th or 11th century, a contemporary of Bhagavad Ramanujacharya and his first teacher, he also understood the Veda Bhedavada and preferred that. So Yadava Prakasha is said to have written a Bhashya on the Brahma Sutra, but unfortunately that Bhashya is lost. Bhagavad Ramanujacharya, who had presented an Advaita outside of Shankaracharya's tradition, named it as Vishishta Aikya, and in Bhagavad Ramanujacharya's Vishishta Advaita, we find that the Brahman is real, but the world is also real. In Shankaracharya's philosophy, we find that Brahman is real, world is mithya or unreal, or you can say it is an illusion. But Bhagavad Ramanujacharya, as has presented in his commentary Sri Bhashyam on the Brahma Sutra, in his Bhashya on the first sutra itself, very vehemently criticizes the views of Shankaracharya, calling them as Purvapaksha, Lagu Purvapaksha, Maha Purvapaksha, and his own final conclusion as Lagu Siddhanta, Maha Siddhanta. And there he has presented 7 Anupapatti fallacies regarding the Advaita, Avidya also, and he has presented the view that you cannot totally discard the matter or material manifestation and go for the Advaita Brahma. It is together. The Advaita Brahma is together with matter and self. This is his understanding. So that Brahma minus the Jiva and Jagat is the ultimate reality according to Shankara. Brahma together with self and Prakriti is the ultimate reality according to Bhagavad Ramanuja. So in this Advaita we find that there is one reality, but it contains the other two within it, like a pregnant lady. The pregnant lady carries the fetus and she is one walking, but there is another soul inside. Similarly, there is one Brahma, but it is having the matter for its body, Sharira, and that Brahma is the Shariri. And it goes to the extent of saying that even the Jiva is Sharira, and within the Jiva there is another Paramatma. Yaha Atmani Madhyatishthati Atmanam Antara Yamayati Yam Atma Naveda Yasya Atma Shariram. So this particular sentence is quoted by Bhagavad Ramanuja and his followers, and they say that it should be understood together. It cannot be understood separately. So they have accorded a distinct place for the matter, that is Jagat. And the other thinkers like Nimbarka, Madhvacharya, then Vallabhacharya, they also preferred Advaita, but slightly different. Somebody says Bheda Bheda, somebody says Shuddhadvaita, excepting Madhvacharya, who never used the word Advaita, who never supported that. All the other had to accept Advaita in one way or the other, so that the Upanishadic statements can be properly connected, properly gleaned out. That means an essence of the Upanishadic philosophy can be properly understood if Advaita is also taken into consideration. Then after Ramanujacharya in the 11th century, in the 12th and 13th centuries, we found a kind of great spiritual revolution, philosophical revolution in India, that in the 11th century, Gorakhnath appeared, and Gorakhnath Baba, he traveled across not only India, Afghanistan, Tibet, Sri Lanka, and farther lands, and he had propounded the Advaita in a different form. Because in his works we find that he is totally placed in the Nirvikalpaka Tattva, and it comes very close to the Brahma of Shankaracharya only. Thus, the Natha system was very dominant, and Gorakhnath Baba had his disciples. One of them was Gahni Baba, Gahni Natha, and sometime in the 12th century only, 12th or 13th century only, or we can say the beginning of the 13th century, that Gahni Baba traveled to Nashik, but he carried along with him the flavor of bhakti from Gorakhnath Baba. And he had added this to the Advaita of Shankaracharya, and he started preaching this to his disciples. And one day he was teaching, all of a sudden a boy ran into his cave, totally trembling, shivering. Then Gahni Baba asked him. That boy said, my name is Nivrittinatha. My parents are there somewhere down the hill, but a tiger appeared and we ran away, and I have come to your cave to seeking protection. Then Gahni Natha, he took his into his arms, and he assuaged him, and then taught the Natha Sampradaya to Nivrittinatha. And Nivrittinatha happens to be the eldest brother of Jnaneshwar Maharaj. Jnaneshwar Maharaj was the fourth. So thus Nivrittinatha got the Natha knowledge from Gahni Natha. He returned and he passed on this knowledge to his parents, and by their order, or you can say instruction, he passed on this information to his brothers and one sister, Mukta Tai. Thus, Jnaneshwar Maharaj was initiated into Natha Sampradaya by his eldest brother and teacher, great teacher, Nivrittinatha only, and he very aptly acknowledges this in his commentary Jnaneshwari at several places. Everywhere he says, Nivrittinatha, Nivritti Dasu, I am only a slave or servant of Nivrittinatha, he says, and he takes that with great pride and reverence, and he remembers with all fondness the name of his eldest brother. And this Jnaneshwar Maharaj belonged to the Kulkarni family, but he was one of the founders of Varkari Sampradaya tradition in Maharashtra. Vitova and Krishna, very typically, all the Natha teachers before Jnaneshwar Maharaj were the followers of Shiva Sampradaya. In Gorakhnath system and others also you find the Shaiva Sampradaya, but for the first time in the Natha Sampradaya we find the inclination towards Vithoba and Krishna tradition, in which there is a kind of amalgamation of Jnana and Bhakti, and Bhakti reaching its culmination, the culminating point. So this is known as Natha Vaishnava tradition, slightly different from that of Adi Shankaracharya. If somebody questions whether Adi Shankaracharya did not ever conceive the idea of role of Bhakti in his Advaita, we say not altogether, because Shankaracharya also realized the importance of Bhakti, but he did not establish a separate tradition in the name of Bhakti because he preferred Jnana Marga. But while explaining the word Bhakti, Bhakti Rav Vyabhicharini in the 13th chapter also, Shankaracharya has definitely used the word Jnana Lakshanam Bhakti. In the works of Bhagavad Ramanuja also we find this kind of explanation, especially in the Vedartha Sangraha and Sri Bhashyam. In the very first shloka of Sri Bhashyam we find that Shruti Shirasi Vidipte Brahmani Srinivase Mama Bhavatu Parasmin Shemushi Bhakti Rupa. So he prays to the Lord that let my knowledge mature into Bhakti. So that is the idea, and that is found in the commentary of Shankaracharya and Bhagavad Gita also. So when we study these Acharyas very carefully, we find that somebody has sown the seed, somebody has watered that, and somebody has got the fruits. So this way, it is a great development we find. But each Acharya has contributed logically, philosophically, culturally, and religiously to that particular tradition that the tradition survived because of the contribution of the teacher. Otherwise, maybe the tradition would have died a natural death. We find in the works of all the other later teachers of Adi Shankaracharya that his ideas were taken, examined, analyzed, and presented in a different manner, so that the contemporary society would accept and follow for their ultimate benefit. Shankaracharya says in the commentary on Brahma Sutra that if a person does not understand the true purport of Upanishads and follows something blindly, definitely anartham cha iyat nishreyasat pratihanyeta yatkinchit pratipadyamanaha. See, without applying our logic, if we blindly follow something, we will definitely fall from the higher goal. That is the fear. That's why all Acharyas claim that we are trying to provide the best and final purport of the Upanishads. And we find a very rare combination of Jnaneshwar Maharaj, that he was a saint, he was a poet, he was a philosopher, and a yogi. We find in his life that he was a saint. It is understandable from his Abhanga. He was a great poet. You can understand this from his commentary on Bhagavad Gita, Jnaneshwari. He was a great philosopher. This you can understand from his Amrutanubhava, Haripata, and all that. He was a yogi. This you can understand from his commentary on the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Jnaneshwari, and his life also, where he is stated to have moved the immovable things. He made even a buffalo to chant the Vedic mantras. So all these show that he was a great yogi, an acclaimed yogi. His Jnaneshwari, the oldest text that is surviving literary work in the Marathi language, which inspired major bhakti movement, saint points like Eknath Maharaj, Tukaram Maharaj. So all these got inspired by the Jnaneshwari, and Gulabrao Maharaj of the 19th century also got so influenced by the Jnaneshwari that he was taken away by that. And he had written about 134 works in his short life, 34 years life, and he was a blind person. So a blind person who lived only for 34 years could compose 134 works, and he was totally inspired by this Jnaneshwari. And the Jnaneshwari interprets Bhagavad Gita in the Advaita Vedanta tradition only. Then you may say, okay, Shankaracharya said something, and Jnaneshwar Maharaj had just explained the same thing in Marathi. No. Jnaneshwar Maharaj has got a lot to add to that. The Gita has 700 verses, while Jnaneshwari has about 9,000 verses. And the final version of that was made by Eknath Maharaj in the 16th century, maybe 300 years after Jnaneshwar Maharaj. The text was fallen in the hands of Eknath Maharaj. He had edited the text, and at the end of that, he has very clearly written, this is the final text of Jnaneshwari. Nobody can add or delete anything. If you add even a single stanza, you are actually making the Amrita Uchishta. Uchishta is a different context. Uchishta, that concept is unknown to the Western culture. But Uchishta in our tradition, that means already you have put in your mouth, then it is impure. So he says, if Amrita is made impure, you are the loser, not the Amrita, he said. Then when we come to the Vada, Jnaneshwar Maharaj has presented a different kind of creation, theory of creation. When we compare, we have the Ajati Vada, there is no creation at all. Gaudapada Acharyas, Arambha Vada, this is the theory of creation of the Nayayikas, Nyaya Shastra. Pratitya Samutpada is the theory of creation according to the Buddhists. Srishti Drishtivada, Drishti Srishtivada are the theories of creation presented by the later philosophers basing on the works of Shankaracharya. Then we have the Parinamavada of Sankhya Yoga. Even Bhartru, Prapancha, Bhaskaracharya, they presented Parinamavada in Vedanta. Then we have basically in the Advaita 3 Vadas: Drishti Srishti Vada, Vivarta Vada, Abhasa Vada. The Abhasa Vada was taken by Kashmiri thinkers like Abhinav Guptacharya and others. Vivarta Vada, we all know that Shankaracharya and his followers have taken. Drishti Srishti Vada was developed by later Advaita thinkers, followers of Shankaracharya, but they have beautifully presented on the basis of the Yoga Vasishtha that the creation is an appearance born from your drishti. That means as long as there is drashta, there is this creation. It is drishti srishti. That means drishti samakalina srishti or drishti janya srishti. Both are presented in Shastra Siddhanta Lesh Sangraha of Appaya Dikshita also. So this is drishti srishti. That means as long as there is mind to project something, something will be projected, as in the dream state. So the wakeful state is also like the dream state, but it is a continuing one, that is a short duration one.
Sir, I'd like to just interrupt. We have only 5 more minutes, so if you can...
Yeah, we have come to the end of this one. So Jnaneshwara Chidvilasa Vada is basically the theory about the creation that Shankaracharya says it is Vivarta, while Jnaneshwara says it is Chidvilasa. That means the projection or the game of the divine energy. And he presents Nama Japa, while Nama is discarded in Shankara's philosophy as Mithya, Nama Rupa, Nama Rupe Prathakritya, he states. But Nama Japa is very strongly advocated by Jnaneshwar Maharaj, who says devotion is the highest yoga. Karma is in the form of worshipping Krishna. Dhyana means contemplating on Krishna. Saguna is not inferior, but according to Shankara, Saguna is inferior. Saguna is just a manifestation of the Nirguna, is that which Jnaneshwar Maharaj presents. Entire world is the manifestation of the Lord. So there is only one reality, that is the substratum of pure love. This pure love, which is very sweet, is called as Madhurya. Though there are various expressions of love, like in friendship we have love, in fondling the children also we have love, in fostering them also we have love. But love reaches its zenith only in the Madhurya, the love between lovers. So that kind of love should be there between the self and the supreme self. So this is the Madhurya Bhakti, which will definitely take one to the ultimate reality called Krishna in this system. So Jnaneshwar Maharaj always uses the word Krishna Vithala only. Panduranga, Vithala are the words, but he prefers to use the different words like Vishwatma, Vishwamaya. So these are the words used by Jnaneshwar Maharaj throughout his Jnaneshwari, and he wants to say that the world is of course illusion, but illusion to an ignorant person. But the same world is a manifestation of divine energy to a realized soul. So this kind of explanation is provided by Jnaneshwar Maharaj, and it is definitely a very valuable addition to existing Adi Shankaracharya's ideology. So thus we understand a development in the philosophical thought, a very beautiful addition to that. Thank you all. Namaste.
Thank you, Professor Ji, for wonderfully sharing with us how a great saint like Jnaneshwar was inspired by Shankara, and at the same time, the differences in their approach towards bhakti, towards Nama Japa, and towards this creation. It's heartening to note how after so many centuries also Shankara continues to inspire a lot of thinkers and philosophers. Let me see if there are any questions. Okay. So, as you said, that the main difference between Jnaneshwar and Shankara was in the way they approached bhakti, in the way they approached sadhanas. Is that the main difference?
Exactly, ma'am. Jnaneshwar Maharaj, he of course advocates the Bhakti theory, and because he advocates Bhakti theory, he has to accept Saguna. But in Shankara's system, Saguna Brahma is inferior. And in the Natha Sampradaya, everywhere, even in the works of Gorakhnath, we find that Saguna Nirguna Donahi Samana. In Marathi, they say that both are equal. And it is only another side of the Nirguna Brahma. And they don't say that Saguna is something to be discarded. So for that only, they say we have two ways to approach the ultimate reality. One is positive, another is negative. The negative way is Vyatireka, Neti. That is the negative way. But Sarvam Khalvidam Brahma, Aitadatma Vidam Sarvam. This is all the Anvaya, the positive way of approaching the ultimate reality. So this is exactly what Jnaneshwar Maharaj followed. Neti, Shankaracharya followed. So there should be a kind of proper synthesis between these two so that a true aspirant, spiritual aspirant will be benefited.
Thank you so much for this session. Because of shortage of time, we're not able to take more questions, and we are looking forward for more sessions from you and detailed sessions of the Jnaneshwari at some time in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you. Namaste. Namaste, sir. See you.
Friends, we have many more sessions for the rest of the month, and please join us for all the sessions.
Thank you, Madhusudan ji.
Namaskar, sir. Namaste.
So tomorrow morning and on every, for the next 6 weekends, we are having Nima Majumdar talk to us about Prashnottara Ratnamalike, a work by Adi Shankara. So please do tune in wherever you are at 7 a.m. India time for this in-depth session, which will run over 6 sessions. Thank you so much and see you.
Madam, there is a question, of course, but due to lack of time, we could not take some Elios. She asks how this world manifested from Brahma. So Shankaracharya says it's only an illusion. Nothing is created. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Okay. Thank you so much. See you all.